Ladies and gentlemen, it's Essex Hydra, and I'm here talking again about Inquisitor Martyr. That's right, we've had another developer stream, and this time a little bit of gameplay footage has been given to us. It's probably in the region of about half an hour of various missions. This is obviously available on the developer stream, but I'm going to be giving you a little bit of a summary as to what they were talking about. So, first up, I would say it was largely repeating the previous stream, stating what is going to be within 2.0 for anyone that sort of missed the last memo. We obviously have a little bit of gameplay to go alongside, and there have been some, let's say, additional clarifications. I think it's safe for me to just sort of start from the beginning and go through each of the points. So first up, itemization changes are going to be a fairly major one for the game. The item tier is going to be increased by 1, so we're going to have something above the old relics, and they are going to be rolling random abilities from a pool of abilities. They're largely going to be two-handed weapons, I think they've described, and as well as this there is also going to be demonic and holy weapons, and so that is very nice to see. The fact that we're going to have random abilities, and some of these abilities will be new to the game, could potentially make for some very interesting and fun character creation options, so this is really cool, or character customization options, so very happy about this change. There is also mention, obviously, about some changes to skills and balance and weapons, etc., and a lot of stuff has been reworked, not only in terms of execution, but in terms of animation, and that's what we're really seeing in the footage here, is that everything's been sped the hell up. Basic cooldown is even, I think, sped up about 2 to 3 times. You can see with the global cooldown, it is now in the region, I would say, of about 0.6 of a second. I might be a bit off, but it seems a lot shorter than it was. I reckon around 3 times shorter. So we're going to have a lot more going on in gameplay straight away. They've clearly junked the concept of this being a slow, tactical, strategic ARPG, and they're just saying, you know what, let's just mash some buttons and have some fun. So this is going to be very interesting to see, and the combat already looks like it's been sped up a good bit. It looks like watching a video on sort of 1.25 speed, or perhaps even 1.5 for those of you that find I speak a little slowly in the YouTube videos. I actually do that when watching a lot of others. It actually really works for some people who have a very slow cadence. But anyway, looking pretty promising, and the gameplay is looking pretty quick. Now, what I'd really like to see next is the enemy ability reworks, or enemy ability additions that they've said are going to be the case as well. This is something that is very well, for those of you that have been following my channel for a couple of years now, this is one of the first videos I ever made on Martyr, saying we need abilities on enemies, something to dodge, something to move around, something that makes your character have to do something depending on what they're fighting against. And Martyr kind of never really tickled this that much. There's the occasional ground effect, but it's always been let's say a little bit light on the mechanics that force you to do something. Although, in all fairness, I would say their latest DLCs, I've seen a marked improvement with that, with some of their latest corn abilities and units in particular. So I really think that they're trying to move in that direction. But what I'm saying is I need to see before passing final judgment here what the actual combat is going to be like once all of these things are implemented as such. Because right now we have a few bits and bobs which are very nice. We obviously have some sped up animations, which is making it look okay, a little bit more fluid. Some of the animations also look like they've had some tweaks and improvements. Plasma cannon looks a little bit more, well, plasma-like. Some of the sword swings look a little less arcade-like and a little bit more fitting with the sort of high-quality textures that are within the game. So, all in all, pretty pleased with the look of the changes. And for those again who missed the previous stream, there are also changes to items in the sense of socketing items now, with both runes and sockets, and they're not going to be called gems in the final version, but you will hear them referred to as gems, simply because if you've played an MMO, you know what that is. It's going to be like a plus X amount to a certain stat. It's a pretty, let's say, generic addition to an item, but a nice extra layer to grind out, optimize, min-max, etc. If you want to be that super tanky character, you can go for it. If you want to be that super damagey character, you can go for it. And extra layers like this are nice to have. It just gives you extra things to do. So I'm happy to see this, and I'm happy to hear about this. In particular, really excited to see what happens with the demonic and holy weapons. And I really hope that there is a little bit of, perhaps even some demonic and holy skins for the radicals and puritans out there. At least that would tickle my pickle. Now, as well as this, the tarot mission's also getting some changes, which we heard about last time. What this is loosely that you will level up tarot cards by collecting their components, and you will level them up to gain greater rewards, I believe, and you will be able to tarot any mission, not just go on a particular tarot mission. So this is all very nice and all very good, and it's going to make things a little bit less... the tempo I was never a huge fan of sort of do boring mission, boring mission, boring mission, boring mission, tarot mission, nice reward, boring, 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 tarot, and I didn't really like that tempo, so I don't know what the new tempo is going to be like, but I'm hopeful that it's going to be a little bit of an improvement, and perhaps there'll be something you can use more frequently, let's say, or even if it is just 1 in 5 missions or 1 in 4 missions, hopefully it's hopefully the tempo feels better. As well as this, we know the Warzone is going to be getting some changes, at least in terms of sort of direction and vision. It's no longer going to be the grinding end game of must reach X tier in order to be the best player that ever was. Personally, never been a fan of that. I think anything that makes you repeat the same thing 1,000 times is less than preferable. What they've stated they're going to be changing this to is more of a intermittent challenge to try and do. So there'll be war zones for all sorts of levels. So you don't have to be like end game to do a war zone. You can just compete in war zones, and they're basically going to be intermittent gear checks. So it sounds like they're just going to be zone gate to basically see if you're able to transition to the next area, see if you've managed to get a good enough build as such. So I like the idea of this. I think this is a better direction rather than encouraging us to do the same map 500 times. In terms of other changes, there is a little bit of a sort of a vagueness here about what the replacement for endgame is going to be. Now, there is some mention of this. There is mention that there's going to be components to farm and sort of secret super special missions to do, but really all that right now is a little bit on the vague side. So that's something I think I'm going to be very, very curious to see what happens, and how they're going to fill that void from level 70, which is when you finish the campaign, or 60 to 70 I believe they've stated, and how you then get to level 100, or if even there is any incentive to reach level 100. But either way, with the co-op campaign being present within 2.0, I think that's going to be a big selling point. And one thing I would sort of start to raise a question mark about here is, okay, Neocore, you're making the campaign, there's a lot more incentive to play it now that we have co-op. Okay, there's a lot more reason to play it. Maybe, just maybe, it's time to consider a New Game Plus campaign mode. You know, everything gets super hard difficulty all of a sudden, everything is incredibly nuts, and play the campaign through again with friends, with your max level characters. You know, honestly, I think when you invest this much time into a game, in terms of making it, you normally invest a lot of time in the story, and I think the story was the best component of Martyr. Now, they might be aiming to change that, but I really do think, actually, especially with the co-op changes, having replayable story is probably going to be a large saving point for this game, and something that's going to keep some players playing for a lot longer, especially if they're not that keen on the options available to them after the game has been, or campaign has been completed. But this is just my thought. It might not be the case come the launch of this patch. There might be sufficient stuff to keep you happy, but continually making new characters to have to play a new campaign, I mean, again, I think we've seen in many cases with this that the players like things that are just traditional within ARPGs, that are expected, or at least many players do. So something like the ability to replay a campaign in a New Game Plus, for me, I think that could be a real winner. But anyway, guys, it's all looking very interesting. We're going to have more footage to go through each week by the sounds of it, or maybe not every week, but they've said as and when they can do more, they will, and it should be fairly frequent. Still no ETA on the patch. There is let's say they're being very, very ambiguous as to when it will come out, sort of sooner than you think, this year, but not next week. And yeah, we don't know. Clearly it's still a work in progress. They're patching and putting things together on this test build, you can see. Still a lot of placeholders, still the majority of stuff they've described seems to be missing, so lots still to do, but some excitement I think is starting to brew. Guys, have yourself a great weekend. I'll see you around.